In this lesson, we will cover loading mechanical equipment families into a project, selecting the appropriate equipment type to place, and placing mechanical equipment at the correct location. In this building model, there's a foundation slab outside of the building that represents an equipment yard. We'll place a couple pumps on this slab, and then we'll place a VAV box above one of the exam rooms inside the building. When you place mechanical equipment, you may need to load families into the project. You can do this before you begin placing equipment. On the Insert ribbon, in the Load from Library panel, there's a Load Family tool. Or you can switch to the Systems ribbon, and in the Mechanical panel, click Mechanical Equipment and activate the tool. When you do, you'll notice that the same Load Family tool is available here in the Contextual ribbon. When you click Load Family, the Load Family dialog opens. You can then navigate to the location where your family files are saved. For this example, we'll open the default family library and then open Mechanical, MEP, Waterside Components, Pumps. When loading equipment, you can select one family file or multiple family files by pressing Ctrl or Shift. For this example, we'll select the centrifugal pump and then press Ctrl and select Pump-Base Mounted and then click Open. When you do, those families are loaded, and you can expand the type selector to see those families along with any other families that have already been loaded into the project. For this example, I'll select one of the base-mounted pumps. When you select an equipment type, you should then set the level parameters before placing the equipment. In this case, we'll leave ground floor selected, and I'll leave the elevation from level set to 0 for now. You'll also notice that there's a host parameter. This does not indicate that this is a hosted component. If this was a face-based family, you would see a placement panel in the contextual ribbon. But we'll circle back to this in a minute. When you move the cursor into the drawing area, you can see the component underneath your cursor. You can press the spacebar to rotate the component in 90-degree increments before placement. And in this case, this foundation slab is at an angle. There are many buildings that have portions at an angle, or even certain rooms that are at an angle. And if you need to align equipment to that angle, maybe it's the angle of a housekeeping pad or a wall or even a floor, you can hover over the edge or a line on that component and then press the spacebar, and the component will rotate in increments relating to the angle of whatever you're hovering over. So I'll place a pump on this foundation slab, and then you'll notice that the pump is still oriented accordingly. If I move outside or away from an edge, I can then press the spacebar to rotate it in 90-degree increments that are orthogonal to the screen. This time I'm going to leave it at the 90-degree angle, and I'm going to select Rotate after Placement. And then when I click, I can rotate. There's a rotate control that I can use to rotate it just like I was using the rotate tool. I'll enter 30 and press Enter, and then I'll click Modify, and you can see that the pump is now aligned to our other pump. Alright, now when I have one of these selected, one of the pumps, you can see that the host parameter is now the foundation slab. And you'll also notice that the elevation from level parameter is 4 inches, which is the thickness of this foundation slab. And so it's, as I was saying, it's not a hosted component, meaning that it must be placed on a host, but it still has a host parameter, and you can host it to or you can place it on a floor or a slab, and that will be filled in that host parameter. And then you can use the offset from host parameter to move it away from that host even more if you need to. So really the elevation from level and the offset from host parameter in this case will work in conjunction with each other. For example, if I enter 2 foot into the offset from host, the elevation from level it adjusts accordingly. Okay, now let's place a VAV box in the exam room here. So I'll activate the mechanical equipment tool again, and I'll expand the type selector and select a VAV box. And I can press the spacebar once again to rotate it as needed. And then I will place it, I'll simply place it on the ground floor with the elevation from level set to 0. And I'll click Modify. And let's create a section view through here and we'll take a look. So you can select a component afterwards and then modify any of these parameters as needed. So I'm going to change the elevation from level to 10 feet. And now we have it above the ceiling. All right, I'm going to switch back to the mechanical ground floor view. And you'll also notice that if you scroll down in the project browser, you can see a families branch. And when you expand families and then expand mechanical equipment, you can see all of the families that have been loaded into the project. And then if you expand a family, you can see all of the types. And if you select a type and drag and drop it into the drawing area, the mechanical equipment tool activates and the type that you selected to drag and drop is selected in the type selector. Now you can once again do the same thing and place it as needed. In this case, I will set the elevation before placement and we'll click to place it, and I'll click Modify. Last thing here, when you select a mechanical equipment component, you can see icons, and these are connector labels. And so in this case, this is a supply air label, and this is a return air label, and this is an electrical connector label. And it'll tell you the size of the connector and then whether it is in or out. So in this case, this is a 16-inch by 14-inch supply air connector that is out. And you can click these to activate the duct tool. But it's always good to know what connectors are available because those determine the systems that the component can be added to.